I married my boss to escape one pain and found another. My name is Elena, and before anything else, I need to tell you one truth. I never planned to fall in love with the man who saved me. I only planned to survive. The night everything changed, I stood outside his office with my hands shaking, my breath trapped somewhere between fear and hope. I wasn't there to ask for a raise. I wasn't there to confess something. I was there because my world was falling apart, and he was the only person with enough power to stop it. I never imagined he would look at me the way he did that night, or that his decision would tie our lives together in a way neither of us could escape. He was sitting behind his desk, sleeves rolled up, eyes tired, the kind of tired that comes from carrying too much alone. Adrian Crowell, my boss, my distant, cold, impossible-to-read boss. The kind of man whose presence fills a room even when he says nothing. I stepped in, clutching the envelope I had received that morning. "Elena," he said, not lifting his eyes at first. But when he finally did, his gaze froze, as if he instantly understood something was wrong. I tried to speak, but my voice cracked. I handed him the eviction notice, the medical bills, the legal threats, all the storms waiting outside my door. He read everything in silence. Then he leaned back, exhaled slowly, and looked at me with a softness I had never seen in him. "Who did this to you?" he asked. "The truth? A family member I once trusted. A debt I didn't create. A danger getting closer every day." But he didn't ask for the details. He didn't judge me. He didn't dismiss me. He simply stood up, walked toward the window, and whispered, "There's one way to fix this permanently, but it won't be simple." When he turned back to me, his expression had changed. There was something like conflict, maybe even fear, hidden deep in his eyes. "Elena," he said quietly, "marry me." I felt the ground shift. My mind couldn't catch up. My boss proposing? The silence between us felt like a thin glass ready to shatter. I told him this wasn't a joke I could handle, but he wasn't joking. His family company was under strict inheritance conditions. He needed a legal marriage to block a hostile takeover from his own cousin, someone dangerous enough to put not only his future at risk, but maybe mine too. If I married him, he said, he would take care of everything, my debts, my safety, my home, my mother's surgery, all of it. No more threats, no more fear, no more running. "I can protect you," he said, voice low, steady, almost gentle, "and you can protect me." It sounded like a deal between two broken people, two souls trying not to drown. I should have refused. I should have run. But when he stepped closer and said, "You won't be alone anymore," something inside me cracked open. I said yes. We went to the courthouse the next morning. No flowers, no music, no smiles. Just the cold echo of a decision made too fast. When the judge asked if I took him as my husband, I felt my heart begging me to run, begging me to stop, begging me to choose anything but this. But then I remembered my mother lying in a hospital bed, breathing through pain, waiting for help that would never come unless I sacrificed something. So I looked up at Adrian, and he looked back with the sadness I didn't understand yet, and I whispered, "I do." His jaw tightened when he repeated the same words. "I do." Not like a groom in love. More like a soldier accepting his fate. When we left the courthouse, rain began to fall. I wrapped my arms around myself, shivering. Adrian opened his umbrella but didn't step close enough for both of us to fit under it. It was the first sign, the first shadow. The first quiet warning that I was stepping into a life colder than the one I had escaped. He didn't take me home, not to my real home, and not to his. He took me to a private apartment he owned across the city. A place that looked like a hotel room made for someone who didn't know how to rest. He placed the keys on the table and said I could stay there until everything stabilized. He said all the bills were taken care of. He said my mother's surgery was scheduled for the next morning. And then he said something that stung deeper than any lie. "This is a contract, Elena. Nothing more. You'll be safe, but don't expect anything else from me." I smiled, pretending I didn't care. pretending I didn't feel the coldness in his voice or the distance in his eyes. When he left and the door clicked shut, the silence filled the room like a ghost. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wedding band on my finger. It felt too heavy. Too real, too final. I married my boss to escape one pain. But in that moment I felt another kind of ache forming, one I didn't have a name for yet. That night I tried to sleep, but the rain kept tapping on the window, whispering secrets I didn't want to hear. I wondered why he was so distant, so guarded, so broken behind that calm face. I wondered if he hated me. I wondered if he regretted choosing me. And somewhere, deep in the darkness, I wondered if I had just made the worst mistake of my life. But the truth was much crueler. I hadn't met the real pain yet. It was still on its way, wearing his last name. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. My eyes burned from the tears I hadn't realized I shed during the night. The apartment was quiet, too quiet, and for a moment, I forgot I was married. Then I saw the ring again, cold against my skin, and everything came rushing back like a wave that refused to let me breathe. I checked my phone. No message from him. Not even a short one asking if I was okay. Maybe I shouldn't have expected anything, but a part of me, a small, foolish part, hoped he would care a little. I got dressed and went straight to the hospital to be with my mother before her surgery. When I arrived, the nurse smiled gently and said that payment had already been processed early that morning. Adrian had kept his word. I felt a sting in my chest, a strange mix of gratitude and guilt. My mother looked at me from her bed, weak but smiling. "You look tired," she said softly. I told her it was nothing, but she touched my hand with the same tenderness she always had. "You're hiding something." I forced a laugh and said, I was just worried about her. I couldn't tell her the truth. I couldn't tell her that her life was being saved by a marriage built on fear. When the doctors took her into surgery, I sat alone in the waiting room, staring at the floor tiles until they blurred together. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Your husband asked me to update you. The surgery is going well." Husband. The word looked wrong on my screen. Heavy, sharp, unreal. I read it twice before understanding that Adrian wasn't coming. He didn't want to be seen with me. He didn't want anyone to know about us yet. Maybe ever. 3 hours later, the surgeon came out and said the operation was a success. Relief washed over me so fast I felt dizzy. I cried quietly, trying not to draw attention. While hugging myself, I wondered if Adrian felt anything at all. Did he care that he had saved a life? Or was this just a business transaction to him? I wiped my tears, inhaled deeply, and decided I needed answers. By evening, I went to his company building. The office was dim, lights low, only a few lamps glowing through the glass walls. I found him exactly where he always was, alone, working, looking like a man who didn't know how to exist outside responsibility. He glanced up when I entered, but his expression didn't change much. "Elena," he said calmly, as if we hadn't just tied our lives together. "Is everything okay?" "My mother survived," I said, hoping he would at least show some emotion. He nodded once, like someone acknowledging a report. "Good, just that. One word, so empty, so cold." I felt something inside me tighten painfully. "Why didn't you come?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked down at a stack of documents and replied without hesitation, it wouldn't have changed anything. His indifference cut deeper than any insult could. I stepped closer. It would have changed everything for me. He finally raised his eyes, and for a moment I saw something like conflict flicker there. But it disappeared fast. "This wasn't part of the deal," he said, tone firm but not cruel. "You asked for protection. I'm giving it. But emotional involvement, that's not something I can offer." I opened my mouth to argue, but he stood up abruptly and walked to the window, hands in his pockets. His posture was tense, like someone holding a heavy secret. "You shouldn't get attached," he said quietly. "I'm not the man you think I am." I wanted to ask what that meant. I wanted to ask why his voice sounded like a warning, like a bruise waiting to happen, but he didn't give me the chance. Instead, he walked past me, picked up his coat, and left the office with a polite but distant goodnight, Elena. I watched the elevator doors close behind him, my heart sinking deeper with every passing second. I married him for safety, but standing there in that empty office, I realized something terrifying. Emotional safety was the one thing he would never give me. And yet, I already felt myself wanting it. I stayed there for a moment, surrounded by silence, wondering what kind of man Adrian really was. The cold, distant boss? The savior who paid for my mother's surgery? The stranger who offered marriage with no emotion? Or the man whose eyes softened for a single second when he saw me cry? I didn't know, but I wanted to. When I finally returned to the apartment he had given me, the loneliness felt louder than before. I tried to sleep, but my thoughts kept chasing each other. Why was he so distant? Why did he push me away and pull me closer at the same time? Why did my heart ache for someone who didn't want to feel anything? I wrapped myself in the blanket, closed my eyes, and whispered to the darkness a truth I didn't want to admit yet. The pain I found in this marriage was starting to feel dangerously like longing. The days that followed felt like walking through a house filled with closed doors. Doors I didn't know how to open, and doors Adrian refused to touch. My mother was recovering well, and every evening I visited her. She kept asking how I was managing everything, and I kept lying with the softest voice I could. I told her work was fine. I told her I was staying at a friend's place. I told her I was strong. But at night, when I returned to the empty apartment, the silence felt like it was swallowing me whole. Adrian didn't call. He didn't text. He didn't check on me, not even once. But every morning at exactly 7, a driver showed up to take me to work. People looked at me strangely when I arrived in a black car with tinted windows. I felt their eyes on me, their whispers brushing my skin like cold wind. They didn't know I was married to the man in the top office. No one knew, and maybe that was the point. Inside the company, nothing changed. Adrian treated me like every other employee professional, distant, untouchable. His voice never rose. His expression never shifted. He didn't give me special tasks or privileges. He didn't even look at me longer than necessary. It was as if the courthouse marriage had been a fever dream, something only I remembered. But I caught moments, small cracks in his armor. A pause when I entered a room, a breath he held too long, a softness in his eyes when he thought I wasn't looking. It was enough to confuse me, enough to make me question what he truly felt, enough to make the ache in my chest grow stronger every day. One night, after a long shift, I stayed late at the office to finish a report. The building was almost empty, the hallways lit only by emergency lights. I was about to leave when I noticed a thin line of warm light spilling from beneath Adrian's office door. My heart skipped. I knew I shouldn't disturb him, but something pulled me closer. Maybe curiosity, maybe longing, maybe the need to understand the man I had tied my life to. I knocked gently. No answer. I hesitated, then turned the handle. The door opened to reveal Adrian sitting on the floor beside his desk, his head resting against the wall, his eyes closed. His coat was thrown over a chair, his tie loose, his hair slightly messy. He didn't look like the perfect, controlled boss everyone feared. He looked human, exhausted, broken. He opened his eyes slowly when he sensed my presence. For the first time, he didn't hide behind coldness. He didn't put up walls. He just looked at me, vulnerable in a way I never imagined. "Elena," he whispered, voice rough, "why are you here so late?" I stepped into the office, my heartbeat quickening. "I could ask you the same thing." He tried to stand, but his legs seemed weak. Instinctively, I reached out and offered my hand. He hesitated for a second, then took it. His touch was warm, almost too warm, like he had been fighting something inside him. "I didn't want you to see me like this," he murmured. There was a heaviness in his tone, a shadow behind every word. I wanted to ask what was wrong, but I could feel him closing again, like a door shutting quietly. Still, he didn't let go of my hand right away. We stood there in silence, the world shrinking to a breath between us. His eyes lingered on mine, searching, unsure, maybe even longing. Then he stepped back, breaking the connection so abruptly it felt like being pushed into cold air. "You should go home," he said, voice returning to its controlled calm. "It's late." I nodded slowly, but something inside me rebelled. "Adrian, you don't have to go through everything alone." For a moment, I thought he would let the walls fall again. For a moment, I thought he would tell me the truth, whatever truth he was hiding behind all that silence. But instead he turned away, shoulders stiff. "Good night, Elena." Those were his final words before I left his office. But they stayed with me the entire night, whispering memories into my dreams. Over the next week, I tried to keep my distance, afraid that if I got closer, I would drown in emotions he didn't want. But fate has a cruel sense of humor. One evening, as I was leaving the hospital after visiting my mother, I saw a familiar figure leaning against a black car. My breath caught. Adrian. He looked like he had been waiting for hours, hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on the entrance. When he saw me, he straightened, his expression unreadable. "How is she?" he asked. His voice was softer than I expected. I told him she was healing well. He nodded, relief flickering across his face before he hit it. Then he opened the car door for me. "Let me take you home." I hesitated. He didn't insist. He just waited, like someone who had hurt you but didn't know how to apologize. I got in. The ride was quiet, but not uncomfortable. The city lights passed through the windows like streaks of gold, casting shadows on Adrian's face. I studied him carefully, noticing the tension in his jaw, the way he kept glancing at me as if fighting with himself. When we reached the apartment building, he stepped out first and opened my door again. I whispered a soft thank you, unsure what else to say. Then, just as I turned to leave, he spoke my name, soft, barely audible. "Elena." I froze. He looked at me like a man standing on the edge of something dangerous, something forbidden. "I'm trying," he said. "I just don't know how." Before I could reply, he stepped back, got into the car, and drove away, leaving me with more questions than answers, and a warmth blooming painfully inside my chest. After that night, something unspoken began to shift between us. I felt it in the way he looked at me during meetings, in the pauses when our eyes accidentally met, in the silence that wasn't cold anymore, just full of things neither of us dared to say. He didn't treat me like a stranger, but he didn't treat me like a wife either. We existed in the space between dangerous, fragile, undefined. I kept telling myself not to fall for him, that this marriage was only a contract, that he made his limits painfully clear. And yet, every time he showed even the smallest crack of vulnerability, my heart reacted before my mind could stop it. I didn't want him. I didn't want to feel connected to a man who couldn't love me. But emotions aren't obedient. They grow in silence. They bloom in shadows. They cling to the smallest drops of warmth. One Friday evening, after most employees had already left, I realized I had forgotten my jacket in one of the conference rooms. As I walked to get it, I heard voices coming from the hallway. Harsh voices. Someone arguing. I recognized the tone before the words. Adrian. And another man, one I had never heard before. The argument grew louder. "You think marrying some random girl will stop me?" The other man spat angrily. "You think that pathetic move will protect the company?" My heart froze. I stepped closer, careful to stay hidden behind the wall. Adrian's voice came next, sharp and controlled. "Stay out of my life, Marcus. You've done enough damage." Marcus, his cousin, the one he warned me about. The air thickened around me as Marcus let out a cold laugh. "A fake marriage won't save you. You'll lose everything, Adrian. And I'll be right there to watch." My heart pounded so hard I thought they would hear it. Adrian replied with a voice I had never heard from him before, low, dangerous, almost trembling. "If you come near her, if you even breathe in her direction, I swear I won't stay silent anymore." The hallway fell quiet. My hands shook. I didn't know if I should feel afraid or protected. Because in that moment it was clear Adrian wasn't only protecting his company, he was protecting me. Not just because of the contract, not just because of the deal. Something in his voice told me there was more, something deeper, something he didn't want to face. Marcus scoffed and walked away, footsteps echoing like a threat disappearing into the dark. When I heard silence, I stepped back quickly, pretending I had just turned the corner. Adrian came out seconds later, his expression tense, the edges of his composure fraying. When he saw me, his shoulders stiffened. "How long have you been here?" he asked, eyes searching mine as if afraid of the answer. "I only heard the last part," I whispered, unsure if I should admit more. He exhaled shakily, rubbing a hand across his face. "I didn't want you involved in this." His voice trembled just slightly, but enough for me to notice. I took a step closer. "Adrian, he threatened you." "He threatened us," his jaw clenched. "He always has, ever since my father died." Before he could say more, rain began tapping softly against the windows. A sound that felt strangely familiar. He walked toward the glass wall, looking down at the city, shoulders tense. "This wasn't supposed to touch you," he murmured. "I dragged you into a war you don't deserve." The vulnerability in his tone made my heart ache. Without thinking, I approached him. "I married you because I needed help, but that doesn't mean I'm helpless." He turned to me slowly, surprise softening his features. "You shouldn't take risks for me," he said gently. "It's not your responsibility." I searched his eyes, feeling something pull us together like gravity. "Maybe it's not responsibility," I whispered. "Maybe it's something else." The room fell silent. His chest rose and fell slowly, as if he was fighting with himself. For a moment, he looked like he might step closer. Like he wanted to. Like he was standing inches away from rewriting everything between us. But then, just as quickly, he broke the moment. "We should leave," he said softly. "It's getting late." His voice was calm again, but the tremble inside it lingered like a secret he didn't want to confess. He walked ahead, and I followed, my heart aching with every step. That night, I couldn't sleep. The sound of Marcus's threats echoed in my mind, the fear in Adrian's eyes. The way he looked at me like he cared, even if he refused to say it. I kept replaying everything, every word, every silence, every almost. I pressed my hand over my wedding ring, feeling the cold metal warming slowly against my skin. Was I falling in love with him? Or was I falling into something even more dangerous? The next morning brought an answer I wasn't prepared for, a knock on my apartment door. Sharp, hurried, urgent. I opened it to find an older woman standing there, elegant, poised, and carrying a sadness in her eyes that felt oddly familiar. "You must be Elena," she said gently. "I'm Adrian's mother." My breath halted. "I need to talk to you," she continued. "About my son, and about the pain he tries so hard to hide." My world shifted again, and I realized whatever I thought I knew about Adrian was only a fragment of a much deeper story. I invited Adrian's mother inside, my hands trembling as I closed the door behind her. She walked with slow, careful steps, her eyes scanning the apartment as if she were trying to understand the life her son had placed me in. She sat on the couch with an elegance that came naturally, but her hands were clasped tightly, revealing a quiet desperation. I sat across from her, my heart pounding. "You probably don't know much about me," she began softly. "Adrian keeps his world very small, too small sometimes." I nodded, unsure if I should speak. Her eyes filled with a deep sadness. "He didn't tell you I was coming, did he?" I shook my head, she sighed. "He wouldn't. He thinks he's protecting you." I leaned forward. "From what?" Her gaze drifted toward the window as if searching for memories outside. "From himself," she murmured. "From everything he refuses to heal." Her voice cracked a little. "From the grief that has been eating him alive for years." My breath caught. I had seen the shadows in Adrian's eyes, but I never knew they ran this deep. "What happened to him?" I asked quietly. She hesitated, then continued with a trembling softness. "Adrian was married once." My chest tightened. A cold rush swept through me. Married. Once. I swallowed hard, bracing myself. "Her name was Lily," his mother said. They were very young, too young. But they loved each other in a way that made you believe in happy endings. Her eyes glistened, until it all ended overnight. I felt my heartbeat echo in my ears. She died, she whispered. A car accident. Adrian was driving. The room fell silent. My hands froze, my throat tightening painfully. She took a slow breath. He never forgave himself. Not for the accident. Not for surviving. Not for loving her so much that losing her shattered him. A tear slid down her cheek, and I saw the pain of a mother who had watched her son break over and over again. After that, he closed every door. He buried his emotions. He became the man you see now, strong on the outside, hollow on the inside. My chest ached with every word. Suddenly, so many things made sense. His distance, his coldness, his fear, his warnings, his silence, his refusal to love anyone again, his refusal to let anyone close. He believes love destroys, she continued gently. He believes he ruins the people he cares about. She looked at me with eyes full of quiet sorrow. That is why he keeps you at a distance. It's not rejection, Elena, it's fear. I closed my eyes, feeling tears rise. Not because I was hurt, but because I finally saw the man beneath the walls. A man carrying a grief so heavy he couldn't even breathe near it. When I looked back at her, she gave me a sad smile. I watched him after Lily died. I watched him fall apart. I watched him build those walls you keep crashing into. She reached out and gently took my hand. But I also see the way he looks at you. My heart skipped. He thinks no one notices, but I do. And I know my son well enough to say this. He's fighting something he doesn't know how to handle. I whispered, I didn't know he ever loved someone like that. Her expression softened. He didn't just love her. She was the light in every dark room, and losing her convinced him he didn't deserve happiness. Tears burned my eyes. And now, she continued, he's married to you. A woman who is hurting too. A woman he doesn't want to damage. Her words broke something inside me, something small and fragile that had been growing since the day I married him. I don't want to hurt him either, I said softly. I don't know how to reach him. His mother squeezed my hand. Don't rush him, don't push him, just stay. She paused, her voice trembling. Adrian is a storm, Elena. But storms sometimes need a quiet place to rest. Before she left, she touched my cheek gently. He's not as cold as he pretends. One day he will show you that. I nodded, unable to speak. When the door closed behind her, I sat there alone, my heart trembling with a strange mixture of pain and hope. The truth about Adrian's past haunted me the whole night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, imagining him younger, laughing, loving someone with his whole heart, only to lose her in a moment that destroyed him. I imagined him driving through darkness, rain blurring the windshield, guilt tearing him apart. I imagined him holding Lily's hand as she faded away, begging the universe to take him instead. My tears soaked the pillow. By morning, my chest felt tight with the truth I didn't want to face. I wasn't just married to a broken man. I was falling for him. And falling for someone who didn't believe he deserved love was like stepping into deep water without knowing how to swim. I arrived at the office early that day, hoping to avoid him. But when I stepped out of the elevator, Adrian was already there, leaning against the window, arms crossed, looking at the city with a troubled expression. When he turned toward me, something in his face softened. Elena, he said gently. Not cold, not distant, almost warm. My heart beat faster. He walked closer, his steps slow, hesitant, as if he wasn't sure he was allowed to approach me. Did my mother visit you? I froze. He read the answer in my silence. He closed his eyes for a moment, pain flashing across his features. I'm sorry, he whispered. She shouldn't have told you anything. I shook my head softly. I'm glad she did. His eyes widened, fear and confusion mixing in them. Elena, you weren't supposed to know. I took a shaky breath. I needed to. He stepped back slightly, as if my words were dangerous. "You don't understand what this means," he said softly. "You don't understand what loving someone does to me." My heart stopped. He realized what he'd said. And before I could respond, he turned abruptly and walked toward his office, leaving me trembling in the hallway, caught between the man he used to be and the man he was terrified to become again. I stood there in the hallway long after Adrian disappeared behind his office door. His words echoed inside me like a trembling whisper. "You don't understand what loving someone does to me." He didn't say if he loved someone. He said what loving someone does. As if love were a danger, a wound, a curse he couldn't touch without bleeding. I pressed a hand to my chest, feeling my heart pound with questions I wasn't ready to face. I walked to my desk, but I couldn't focus on anything. My hands shook every time I replayed the expression on his face, the fear, the regret, the something else he tried to bury. At lunchtime, I went to the terrace for fresh air. The city wind brushed my hair, and for a few minutes, I let myself breathe. That's when I heard steps behind me, slow, hesitant, familiar. I didn't need to turn. I knew it was him. Adrian stopped beside me, keeping a careful distance. "I shouldn't have said that," he murmured. I looked at him, searching for the truth he always tried to hide. "Why?" I asked softly. He stared ahead at the skyline. "Because it gives you the wrong idea." My heart squeezed. "And what is the right idea?" He didn't answer. His silence was a fragile thing, trembling with everything unsaid. I took a step closer, just enough for our arms to almost touch. "Your mother told me about Lily." His breath caught. His eyes closed. Pain flashed across his face like a shadow returning to old wounds. "She shouldn't have," he whispered, voice breaking at the edges. I swallowed. "I'm sorry for what you've gone through." He shook his head. "Don't be. It was my fault." My chest tightened. "Adrian, accidents aren't—" He cut me off sharply, but not with anger. With grief. "I was driving," he whispered, as if confessing a crime. "I should have been more careful. I should have seen the other car. I should have protected her." His voice cracked. "She died because I failed." Tears burned my eyes. I reached out slowly, letting my fingers brush his hand. He froze, not pulling back but not moving either. "You didn't fail her," I said softly. "You loved her." His jaw clenched, emotion rising like a storm behind his eyes. "And look what love cost her." The wind blew between us, cold and painful. "I can't go through that again, Elena," he whispered. "I can't love someone and lose them. I can't survive that twice." His confession sliced through me, tender and brutal all at once. "Is that why you married me?" I asked quietly. "Because you believed you couldn't fall for me?" He flinched as if the truth hurt. "I married you to protect you," he murmured, "but I didn't expect you to matter." The world stopped, my breath caught, my heart stumbled. His eyes widened. He hadn't meant to say it out loud. He turned away quickly, running a hand through his hair. Forget I said that. But I couldn't. I felt the truth of it in the air around us. He cared. He cared deeply, and it terrified him. For the rest of the day, he avoided me, not with coldness, but with fear, the kind that comes from feeling too much. But every time he passed by, his eyes lingered on me a second too long. His silence became louder than words. His presence warmer than distance. And my heart moved toward him without my permission. That evening, as I was packing my things, the lights suddenly flickered. The entire building went dark for a moment before emergency lights lit the hallways. People murmured, confused. I grabbed my bag, ready to leave, when the elevator doors opened and Marcus stepped out. My stomach dropped. He walked toward me with slow, confident steps, his eyes glinting with something cold. "You must be Elena," he said, his smile sharp. "The new wife." I stepped back instinctively, but he followed, closing the distance. "I've heard a lot about you." His tone was mocking. A pretty girl from nowhere, becoming Mrs. Crowell overnight. "How interesting." My hands trembled. "I don't want any trouble," I whispered. He leaned closer. "But trouble wants you." His smile faded into something darker. "Adrian thinks marrying you will keep you safe. He forgets that everything he touches eventually breaks." Before I could reply, a shadow moved behind him. A hand grabbed Marcus's shoulder and shoved him back with force. Adrian. His eyes were burning with a fury I had never seen before. "Touch her again," he growled, "and I swear you won't walk out of this building." Marcus straightened, brushing off his jacket, unbothered. "Careful, cousin," he smirked. "This girl is already costing you more than you can afford." Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into darkness. When he was gone, Adrian turned to me, his expression shifting from rage to fear. "Are you okay?" he asked, voice trembling. I nodded, though my body shook. He stepped closer, his hand hovering near my arm, unsure if he was allowed to touch me. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I shouldn't have let you walk alone." His breath was close, his eyes were soft, his walls were down, and without thinking, I leaned into him, resting my forehead against his chest. For a moment he didn't move. Then his arms slowly wrapped around me, careful, gentle, as if afraid I might break under his touch. It was the first time he held me, and the moment he did, I knew I never wanted him to let go. But love, in his world, didn't arrive without consequences. And the next consequence was already on its way, waiting for the perfect moment to tear everything apart. Adrian didn't let go of me right away. His arms stayed around me for several long, trembling seconds, as if he were afraid that the world would steal me from him if he loosened his grip. When he finally pulled back, he did it slowly, almost reluctantly. His hands remained on my arms for a moment, his thumbs brushing my skin, grounding me. His expression was full of things he didn't know how to say. "Elena," he whispered, my name sounding fragile on his lips. I waited, hoping he would finish the thought, the confession hiding behind his eyes. But he didn't. He dropped his hands, stepped back, and swallowed hard. "Let me take you home," he said softly. The ride back to the apartment was silent, but not empty. The air was thick with everything we weren't saying: fear, longing, confusion, a tenderness both of us were too scared to touch. When the car stopped, he walked me to the entrance. Rain had begun to fall again, light and gentle, tapping on the sidewalk like a distant memory. He opened the door for me and hesitated. For a moment, I thought he might come inside. I wanted him to. I wanted to know what it felt like to be close to him without fear or contracts or shadows between us. But he stayed at the threshold, rain dampening the shoulders of his coat. "Stay inside tonight," he murmured. "Lock the door. Don't go anywhere alone." His voice trembled slightly. "Please." It was the first time he had ever said please. I nodded slowly. "Adrian, are you okay?" His eyes softened, and he looked at me the way someone looks at something they can't allow themselves to keep. "As long as you're safe," he said quietly, "I'm fine." He turned to leave, but I reached out impulsively and grabbed his sleeve. He froze. I stepped closer, feeling my breath shake. "You don't have to face all of this alone," I whispered. "You don't have to push me away." He stared at me, anguish flickering across his face. "I don't want to push you away," he said. "But I don't know how to let you in." Before I could answer, thunder rolled in the distance. He gently freed his sleeve from my hand. "Good night, Elena." Then he walked away into the rain, leaving a hollow ache inside me that followed me all the way to bed. The next morning, everything felt different. The building hallways seemed quieter. The office air felt heavier. Even the familiar glow of Adrian's office light felt dimmer. I arrived at my desk, tried to work, tried to focus on anything but him, but every sound made me look toward his door. When he finally arrived, late and looking exhausted, something inside me twisted. His hair was slightly wet, his shoulders tense, and there was a bruise forming on the side of his jaw. A dark, ugly mark. My breath caught. Marcus. It had to be. Adrian didn't notice me staring. He walked straight to his office and closed the door. 20 minutes later, he called for me. His voice was steady, but distant. I walked into his office, and he didn't look up at first. He just motioned for me to close the door. When I did, he leaned back in his chair, eyes shadowed. "There are some documents you need to sign," he said. His tone was colder than yesterday, as if he was forcing himself to rebuild the walls he had accidentally let fall. I stepped closer. "What happened to your face?" He didn't answer at first. Then he sighed. "Nothing you need to worry about." My voice cracked. So it was Marcus. His jaw tightened. "Elena, please, he hurt you because of me," I whispered. He finally looked up and his eyes were full of conflict. "He hurt me because of what I've built," he said quietly. "Not because of you." I took another step, refusing to let him retreat into silence. "Adrian, you don't have to protect me by shutting me out." His gaze soft, just a fraction. "If anything happened to you," he whispered, "I wouldn't survive it." The words hung between us, fragile and terrifying. Before I could respond, there was a knock on the door. Adrian tensed instantly. "Come in," he said, voice steadying. His assistant entered, looking nervous. "Sir, your mother is here to see you." My heart dropped. Adrian stood immediately, worry flashing through him. "Where is she?" "In the lobby," the assistant replied. "She said it's urgent." Adrian turned to me, eyes heavy. "Stay in my office," he said. "Please." Then he left before I could argue. Minutes passed, then 20, then 30. Something was wrong. I paced the room, unable to calm my heart. When the elevator dinged and footsteps echoed in the hallway, I turned toward the door, expecting Adrian. But it wasn't him. It was his mother, and her face was pale, her eyes full of fear. "Elena," she whispered urgently, "you need to come with me. Now." My stomach twisted. "What happened?" She grabbed my hands. "It's Adrian," she said, voice trembling. "He's been taken." The room spun. "Taken," she repeated, tears welling in her eyes. "By Marcus." My world shattered in a single breath. The moment the words left her lips, my knees nearly gave out. I clutched the edge of Adrian's desk to steady myself, my breath shaking as if the air had turned to ice. "Taken," I repeated, barely able to form the word. His mother nodded, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. "Marcus called me," she whispered. "He said Adrian crossed the line." Her voice cracked. "He said I should prepare for consequences." A tremor ran through my entire body. "Where is he?" I begged. "Where did they take him?" She shook her head helplessly. He didn't say. He only said one thing: that Adrian wasn't leaving until he signed over the company. My heart hammered inside my chest. Adrian had warned me about Marcus, but I never imagined it would come to this: kidnapping, threats, violence. And yet, deep down, I knew this was the shadow he had been fighting long before I came into his life. I grabbed my coat and ran toward the elevator. His mother hurried behind me. "Elena, wait, what are you doing?" "I'm going to find him," I said, my voice trembling with fear and determination. "I can't sit here and do nothing." She reached for my arm. "Marcus is dangerous," she whispered. "Please don't put yourself in danger." I turned to her, tears blurring my vision. If Adrian were here, he wouldn't hesitate. He would run into fire to protect me. My voice broke. "I can't abandon him." Her expression softened into something both terrified and proud. She nodded slowly. "Then I'm coming with you." We left the building together, our steps echoing through the cold air. The city felt bigger, darker, heavier than ever before. His mother called every contact she had, every friend of Adrian's late father, every lawyer, every security officer who might have known something. But the answers were always the same. No one knew where Marcus had taken him. It was as if he had vanished. Hours passed. The sky dimmed. Night fell like a heavy curtain. Just when despair began tightening around my chest, her phone rang. She answered instantly, putting it on speaker. A distorted voice came through, cold, almost amused. "Marcus? Looking for Adrian?" he taunted. My blood turned cold. "Let him go," his mother demanded. "Marcus, this has gone too far." He laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "Too far?" "No. Adrian took everything from me. The company, the legacy, the future that should have been mine." His voice grew darker. "I'm just taking back what was stolen." I felt anger boiling inside me. "Where is he?" I shouted. Marcus paused, then chuckled. "Ah, the new wife, the brave one." His tone twisted with cruelty. "Tell me, Elena, how far are you willing to go for a man who can't even say he loves you?" My breath caught because he was right. Adrian had never said the words. But that didn't matter. Not now. "I'll do anything," I said firmly. "Just tell me where he is." Silence. Then Marcus spoke again, voice dripping with satisfaction. "Come to the old warehouse by the docks. Bring no one else. If I see police, Adrian won't be leaving." The line went dead. His mother's face drained of color. "You can't go alone," she whispered. "He's unstable." I looked at her with a shaken but determined heart. "I have to. Adrian is my husband." The word husband had never felt so real, so heavy, so urgent. She cupped my face with trembling hands. "Please be careful. And, Elena, if you save him, he won't push you away again." Her voice softened. "He can't lose another woman he cares about." I swallowed hard, tears burning my eyes. "I'll bring him back," I whispered. The warehouse district was nearly deserted, lit only by flickering street lamps and the distant glow of the city. My footsteps echoed through the cold air as I approached the building Marcus had mentioned. The metal walls were rusted, the windows covered in dust. A heavy door stood slightly open, a dim light bleeding through the crack. My heart pounded like a warning drum. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The smell of oil and old wood filled the space. Shadows stretched across the floor. And there, at the center of the room, tied to a chair, bruised and exhausted, was Adrian. My breath broke. His head was lowered, his breathing shallow. His hands were bound behind him, ropes tight around his chest and arms. I ran toward him, tears falling freely. "Adrian," I whispered, kneeling beside him. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then suddenly widening when he recognized me. "Elena," he breathed, voice full of fear. "What are you doing here?" "You shouldn't. I'm here because I love you," I whispered, words that escaped before I could stop them. His eyes softened, pain and emotion blending into something fragile and beautiful. "You shouldn't have come," he repeated weakly. "It's too dangerous." Before I could respond, footsteps echoed behind us. Marcus appeared in the doorway, clapping slowly with a cruel smile. "Touching," he sneered, "a tragic love story." I shielded Adrian instinctively, turning to face Marcus. "Let him go," I demanded. "This is between you and him, not me." He smirked. "Oh, but you changed everything. You made him weaker, softer." His voice hardened. "You became the perfect weapon against him." Adrian struggled against the ropes. "Marcus, stop this," he growled. "If you want the company, take it. Leave her out of it." Marcus tilted his head. "But hurting her hurts you more. And hurting you is the point." He reached into his coat. My heart froze. I grabbed a metal tool lying on the floor. A rusted wrench hand stood between him and Adrian. "You won't touch him," I said, my voice shaking but steady. Marcus laughed. "You think you can stop me?" But before he could take another step, a sound echoed behind us, sirens blaring in the distance. Marcus cursed under his breath. Adrian lifted his head, weak but triumphant. "I knew she would call," he rasped. "She's my mother. She would never let you hurt Elena." Marcus's eyes widened, rage twisted his face. He turned and ran toward the back exit. I rushed to Adrian, pulling at the ropes, tears falling onto his hands. "It's okay," I whispered. "You're safe now." He winced in pain but managed a faint smile. "You came for me." "Of course I came," I whispered, voice breaking. "I will always come for you." He closed his eyes, leaning his forehead against mine. "Elena, I can't lose you," he murmured. "Not you too." And in that moment, with his breath trembling against my skin, I felt the truth settle between us like a fragile miracle. He wasn't just afraid. He wasn't just broken. He wasn't just protecting me. He loved me, even if he didn't know how to say it yet. The police arrived minutes later, lights flashing through the cracks of the warehouse walls. Officers stormed the building, searching every corner for Marcus. but he had already vanished into the night, like a shadow slipping beneath the door. All that remained was the cold air, the ropes on the floor, and Adrian trembling against me, exhausted, hurt, and finally unmasked. When they checked him, his injuries were worse than they looked. A bruise along his ribs, a gash on his arm, a cut above his eyebrow. His pulse was weak, his breathing uneven. I held his face gently between my hands, my thumbs brushing away the dirt and blood. "Stay awake," I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. "Stay with me, Adrian." He opened his eyes slowly, the blue of them dimmed by pain but still full of something warm, something I had never seen so clearly until now. "Elena," he murmured, leaning into my touch as if it were the only thing keeping him tethered to the world. "You're safe. That's all that matters." Tears blurred my vision. "Don't say that. You matter too." I could feel his pulse under my fingers, weak but present. He looked at me as if he were memorizing my face, afraid he might not see it again. "I thought I lost you," he whispered. "When I heard Marcus was threatening you, His voice cracked. I couldn't breathe. His mother rushed inside then, tears streaming down her face. She knelt beside him, holding his hand, whispering prayers under her breath. For a brief moment I stepped back, letting her hold her son, letting her fear pour out. But Adrian's eyes didn't leave mine, not even once, as if I were the only anchor he had left. The paramedics lifted him onto a stretcher. I grabbed his hand before they could take him away. "I'm going with you," I said firmly. "I'm not leaving you." His fingers curled weakly around mine. "Good," he whispered. "Don't." At the hospital, everything moved fast. Nurses, doctors, bright lights, rapid voices. They treated his wounds, checked for internal injuries, stitched the cut near his eyebrow. I waited outside the room, my hands shaking, my heart pounding like a drum inside a storm. His mother sat beside me, her face pale. "He will be okay," she said softly, as if repeating it would make it true. "He's strong." Wanted to believe that. But the fear of losing him, truly losing him, wrapped around my chest like a fist. Hours passed. Finally, the doctor came out. "He's stable," he said gently. "Exhausted, dehydrated, shaken, but stable." Relief crashed through me so fast I nearly collapsed. His mother covered her mouth, tears of gratitude spilling down her cheeks. We walked into his room together. He was lying on the bed, eyes half open, breathing slowly. I moved to his side, my fingers trembling as I touched his hand. His eyelids fluttered, then lifted. When he saw me, something raw and gentle passed through his expression. "You came back," he whispered. I nodded, tears slipping down my cheeks. "I never left," he squeezed my hand, weak but purposeful. "I was so afraid," he murmured, "not of Marcus. Not of losing the company." His voice lowered to a fragile whisper. "I was afraid of losing you." The air left my lungs. His mother quietly stepped out, leaving us alone. Adrian looked at me with a mixture of pain and longing, his defenses stripped away by exhaustion and fear. "I tried to push you away," he said softly. "I thought if I kept you at a distance, you wouldn't become another memory that destroyed me." He swallowed hard. "But you're not a memory. You're the only thing that feels real." I sat beside him, brushing his hair gently with my fingers. "Adrian, I'm not Lily. I'm not replacing her. I'm not erasing her." His eyes softened with the grief that still lived inside him. "I know," he whispered. "That's what scares me." A tear slid down his temple, because what I feel for you, it's different. His breath trembled. "And it hurts in a new way." My heart broke for him, this man who carried guilt like a scar across his soul, this man who loved so deeply he couldn't bear the thought of losing again. I leaned closer, pressing my forehead gently to his. "You don't have to fight alone," I whispered. "Not anymore." He closed his eyes, breathing me in as if the air around us had shifted into something safer. "I don't want to lose you," he whispered. "Ever." "You won't," I said softly. "Not if you let yourself stay." his fingers intertwined with mine, trembling but certain. "I don't know how to love without breaking," he murmured. "Then we'll learn together," I whispered. "Slowly, safely, at your pace." He exhaled a shaky breath. "I want that," he said. "With you." For a moment the world grew still. Quiet, warm, but life is not a straight path. And healing is not simple. Because the next morning when I woke up in the chair beside his bed, a police officer entered the room with grim news. Marcus had disappeared, and he wasn't done with us yet. The officer's words sank into the room like a cold shadow. Adrian's hand tightened around mine, fear flickering across his expression. I could see the battle inside him, the instinct to protect me, the exhaustion from everything he had suffered, and the quiet terror that Marcus would return to finish what he had started. The officer explained that Marcus had escaped before the police could reach the docks. His car was found abandoned miles away. No traces, no clues. "He's unpredictable," the officer warned. "Stay somewhere safe, together." Adrian nodded, but I could see the dread in his eyes, not because he feared Marcus, but because he feared for me. When the officer left, the room fell into a fragile silence. Adrian stared at the ceiling, his fingers still tangled with mine. "I should send you away," he whispered. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere Marcus can't reach you." My heart clenched. "I'm not leaving you." He closed his eyes, jaw tightening. "Elena, loving someone is dangerous in my world." I shook my head gently. "Then let it be dangerous. Just don't shut me out again." His eyes opened slowly, helplessly. "You don't understand what it does to me when you're in danger." He swallowed hard. "I can't lose someone I... His voice broke, the words trapped behind years of grief and fear. I leaned closer, brushing my lips against his forehead. "You don't have to say it, you just have to stay." For the next few days, I barely left his side. His mother brought food, the nurses came and went. But every night, when the world went quiet, Adrian would look at me with that same fragile conflict, wanting to get closer, afraid to touch the fire he'd buried for years. One evening, after the sunset painted soft colors across the hospital window, Adrian spoke in a trembling whisper. "When Lily died, I stopped living, I stopped feeling. I thought if I kept my world small, nothing else could break me." His fingers brushed mine lightly, as if testing the strength of something he feared to hold. "Then you walked into my office, shaking, desperate, and something in me woke up." His voice lowered. "And it scared me more than anything." My throat tightened. "Adrian." He looked at me, truly looked at me, with a softness that made my heart ache. "I never wanted to love again," he whispered. "I wasn't supposed to." His eyes shone with unshed tears. "But I love you, Elena." The confession left his lips like a wound and a healing at the same time. "I love you in a way that terrifies me." Tears spilled down my cheeks, warm and unstoppable. I placed my hand over his heart, feeling its broken rhythm. "You don't have to be afraid anymore," I whispered. "You're not alone." He pulled me into his arms, holding me with a trembling strength, as if he feared the world would try to steal me away. And in that moment, I held him just as tightly, knowing that love and pain often held hands. But this time, we would walk through both together. But life is never simple. Love is never safe. And healing is never straightforward. After Adrian was discharged, he insisted that we spend a few days somewhere quiet, far from the city, far from the company, far from the memories that clawed at his chest. We drove to a small cabin near the lake where he used to go as a child. The air smelled of pine and calm water. The silence was gentle, not crushing. We walked by the shore in the afternoons, talked about small things, shared long silences that felt like therapy. At night, he would sit beside the fireplace, staring into the flames as if trying to understand how something so bright could burn without hurting. And slowly, day by day, the distance between us began to fade. One night, wrapped in blankets and soft firelight, he reached for my hand. "You saved me," he whispered. Not just from Marcus, but from myself. I rested my head against his shoulder. And you saved me too. He kissed my forehead softly, hesitant at first, then deeper, warmer, like a man learning to breathe again. And when he finally pulled me into his arms, it wasn't from fear or desperation. It was from love, pure, fragile, reborn love. But the past has long shadows. On our last day at the lake, a letter arrived. No name, no return address. Just a single sheet inside. This isn't over. Adrian froze. His face went pale. I felt his hand tighten around mine. Marcus was still out there somewhere in the darkness, waiting, watching. But I looked into Adrian's eyes and saw something stronger than fear. Strength, resilience, love. He folded the letter slowly, then met my gaze. Whatever comes, he whispered, you and I face it together. I nodded, my heart steady. Together. Because love doesn't erase pain, it walks through it. It holds on, it fights, it heals in pieces. And sometimes it stays even when the past tries to tear it apart. I married my boss to escape one pain, and found another. But I also found a love worth surviving for. And sometimes that is enough to start again.